Hello, everybody, and welcome to Comically Incompetent. My name is Doug, and this week we are continuing the Indiana Jones in Review series with my guest, again, dressed as Indiana Jones. Dad, how you doing?
Good. Excited to continue the Indiana Jones saga as we move forward here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get in this one. It's very tonally different, but before I get into it, I do want to go into the beer. For Temple of Doom, we have a beer called The Doomed. So we'll get into that at the end of the show. It's by Anchorage Brewing, who we have had on the show before. So I'm very excited to try it. It looks like a hazy IPA. I forgot to look at the can before.
Very good.
Yeah, triple dry hopped hazy IPA with Citra and Strata hops. So we'll get more into that at the end of the show. So just jumping right into Temple of Doom. I mean, how different of a direction did they choose to go with this one?
So the first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, one of the greatest beginnings of a movie,
yes,
an adventure movie of all time. This movie started with a song and dance number.
Yeah, I mean, you go from like this dark and gritty, boulders falling, intense adventure to
a song and dance number.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they sang "Anything Goes."
Yeah,
and did the whole thing, which
the whole song.
Yeah, which I probably could have done without, but that's okay.
Yeah, you get a good. I think the best thing you get out of that is a good introduction into Kate Capshaw's character.
Right.
You get a good introduction of who she is and her kind of vibe. She's like, the song's not going exactly how she wants, so you can see on her face she's getting like frustrated, and you get that kind of like good vibe of who her character's going to be. But other than that, it was very random. Yeah,
it introduces her into the whole storyline, but you know, in reality, they started the movie with a song and dance number. If you would have asked me, okay, we're going to, I mean, how does that play out? Steven Spielberg says, this is 3 years after Indiana Jones was released, and they're trying to, how do you top Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? So that I get that's impossible. So they decided, we're just going to go in a completely different direction. We're going to start with a song and dance number to begin with.
Where are they, Japan or China? I don't remember exactly what city they're in.
Yeah, that's a good question. Where was that filmed? I think it was Chinese.
Yeah.
So
they
must have been
China somewhere.
Somewhere in China somewhere.
Yeah, which, I mean, then you have this whole, it was very James Bond, this opening scene. Not very Indiana Jones, but very James Bond.
It starts out in a nightclub, and you know what the name of the nightclub is?
No.
Obi-Wan.
Oh, okay. Again, the Star Wars
they have these little things that they throw in there, right? The name of the nightclub is called Obi-Wan. If you don't catch it, it doesn't ring a bell to you, but yeah, they throw in like a Star Wars reference.
Well, another Star Wars reference I forgot to go into last week is this. Remember the scene where Indy is running to Jacques to start the plane? Yep. And the sound the plane makes is the same sound that the X-Wings make when they're being shot down in Star Wars.
Okay.
So they use the same sound effects too. So they did that a lot, but yeah, this opening scene was very James Bond. You have Indy in the very nice suit. It's not a fight. It's he's being poisoned. It's very
that's right.
Interesting.
It was kind of James Bondish, wasn't it? Yes. And he was making a deal for he had gotten an artifact, and he wanted some diamond in return for the artifact, and they were trying to make a deal, but it was one of those classic, okay, turn over the artifact, turn over the diamond kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Kate Capshaw, and what's her character's name?
Willie.
That's right.
Willie something.
Willie is
Scott,
the girlfriend of the bad guy.
Yeah.
The nightclub owner.
Lau,
and she becomes the pawn between Indiana Jones and Lau.
Yeah, he's got the knife to her.
Right.
And he is saying you need to give me.
Well, it wasn't a knife. It was some sort of fork.
Yeah.
Sharp fork thing. But yes.
He's like, you need to give me what you owe me, and then he poisons Indy, and then it's the whole thing where...
Yeah.
But Indy's got his inside man, the waiter, who's got the gun underneath the tray.
And then there's a whole fight scene in the nightclub, and everybody's shooting at each other, but somehow Indiana Jones doesn't get hit with a bullet.
I think it's funny that, like I said, getting to know her character as Willie Scott is... Indy's trying to get the antidote. So people on the dance floor are kicking it, and it's going all over the place. But she's also trying to get the diamond. Same thing's happened to her. People are kicking the diamond all over the place. She's going for the diamond. He's going for the antidote.
That's right.
So I like that kind of contradiction of but the same thing's happening.
And it was an elaborate way to basically say these two are going to be sort of joined at the hip for the rest of this movie.
Yeah, which I thought, as far as because like we said in the last episode, you have a different romantic lead for every movie. So I was interested in going in this direction of having someone, because last we had Marion Ravenwood, who's very strong, kind of running with Indy, doing all this stuff, and she was but she wanted to be there. Willie Scott's very hesitant. She wants nothing to do with him.
Well,
she
she's
doesn't
like
have
a
to.
nightclub singer or something.
She's
right?
stuck in this whole situation,
Right.
whereas Marion's like, I'm going to be a part of this. I'm not leaving your side till it's done.
Right.
Whereas Willie gets stuck with him, and she's stuck on this whole adventure with...
Yes.
Which, then we get that actor, I don't remember his name in real life, but Short Round. He was huge in that time with the Goonies and
the little boy.
Yeah.
Yes. He was a great part of the movie.
Yeah.
You know, kind of that third wheel sidekick kind of person. And I think he was in the Goonies movie.
Yeah, he was Data in the Goonies.
Great. He plays a great part in this whole movie.
Yeah, I mean, I know he stopped acting when he got older, but I mean, man, that kid had talent. That was like, he killed in this movie, and this was a movie that was very intense. He had a lot of intensity, especially, we'll get into it later, but like, the slavery scenes, like the children's slaves and all
there
that
was
stuff.
a lot of intense scenes here. You know, again, a typical Indiana Jones, a lot of killing and things like that, but somehow, just because it's Indiana Jones, it's okay. It sort of lightens the mood, right?
It's like it's one of those movies that, like, there's a lot of death, like you said, but when it's always the bad guys die in terrible ways, so it eases that somehow. It makes it fun somehow when these bad guys are killed in these horrible ways.
That's right.
And also, I don't know if you I'm sure you noticed, but Dan Aykroyd is in this movie.
He does have a cameo, and it never dawned on me till I watched it again to prepare for this podcast, and I'm like, is that Dan Aykroyd? Did I miss something? Is he in the whole movie? And I realized he's just in that little snippet.
Really quick, like he has like a British accent on.
That's right.
He just kind of escorts him from the
but
gate
he's got
to the
that
plane.
Dan Aykroyd voice. You could tell right away as soon as he opened his mouth.
Yeah, I remember I did the same thing. I turned it on to watch it for the show, and I was like, wait, is that Dan Aykroyd? And it's very short scene. Then he shuts the door of the plane, and you realize that they got on the plane of the bad people, of the villains.
Yes, right. It's got the villains in it. But there's huge chase scenes and everything else.
That cool chase scene through China where like they're on that. A Short Round, I think, is driving at one point.
He's driving the car. He's driving the car. Which the car actually, you know, when you look up and they say inconsistencies or things that are not right in the movie.
Yeah.
The movie was supposedly set like 1935, but that was like a 1938 car they were driving around in.
Oh, I had no idea. I didn't see that actually.
But not something you'd notice unless you somehow looked it up. But
yeah, I mean, I remember looking back. I remember seeing the first Raiders of the Lost Ark as a kid, and I don't think I fully understood it was a period piece. I just thought that it took place in like the 1930s.
Right.
So this one I think was interesting to watch, kind of having that same vibe. They didn't dive into like the time period as much. Like the time period wasn't as important in this one because it wasn't Nazis. It was.
But after we get through the musical stuff, we have the big fight scene, which which is typical Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah.
There's a giant gong, and he uses that as a shield.
And he's running behind it,
get
so
behind
shooting
it.
at him. Yeah.
And then they have a chase scene through the city and the town, only to have them escape on a plane. And now Willie is with him.
Now she's stuck there. She has no choice. She's stuck on the plane with him.
Yes.
Which then I like that scene. So it's like these animals, like the plane's carrying like these animals or something. And I like the scene. So Indy goes to fall asleep right there. He's like, "We'll land when we land," and they wake up and the pilots are gone. They bailed out.
Jumped out. They jumped out because they were working for the bad guy.
Yeah, which I think it was supposed to be working for Lau, the guy who just tried to poison Indy.
Yeah.
And one of the scenes that I always think of, because Mythbusters had tested this was possible, was they jump out of the plane using an inflatable raft on the way down.
Yes, that happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, why use a parachute when you can use an inflatable raft to go down?
Now, in all fairness, they were in the mountains, so they didn't fall all the way, 30,000 feet down. They just, they only fell about 5 or 1,000 feet or so.
As far as the Mythbusters, like I was saying, I don't think they ever made it work. No matter what they did
to Mythbusters really try to jump out of a plane with...
They put whatever the name of their buster, their crash test dummy, onto a raft and threw him out of a plane in the inflatable raft.
Yeah. But not only did they jump out in this raft that landed nicely on the snow.
Perfectly on the snow.
It was soft snow, so I get that. Then the raft starts taking off down the mountain in the snow, and then it jumps off the snow, over a cliff, and into a raging river.
Yep. It just keeps getting worse for them the whole time, but the raft stays...
And somehow all three of them stay on board. I don't know if you've ever gone whitewater rafting. I haven't done real intense category whatever whitewater rafting, but I've done some basic beginner whitewater rafting, and it's hard to hang on to the darn boat.
Oh, I'm sure. I did the rafting ride at California Adventure. Does that count? Where you're buckled in?
That doesn't count, no.
Oh, okay.
No, you're buckled in, and they make it impossible to get out.
Well, I think it counts. It'll count. But
What is the better Rapids ride?
Okay.
Is it the Disneyland one or the Knott's Berry Farm one? Because the Knott's Berry Farm one, that gets you really, really wet.
I think the Knott's Berry Farm one, because somehow it's not as safe. I think Disney has this stigma of it has to be really safe, so it's not as rough.
Right.
Knott's just went, screw it, throw them in there, we'll see what happens to them.
Okay, and then what's better, the log ride at Knott's Berry Farm or the log ride
Splash
at Disney
Mountain.
Splash Mountain?
Splash Mountain's the best ride there.
I don't know. The log ride at Knott's Berry Farm is pretty awesome.
It's the best. No, Splash Mountain's
It's got
the
a
best ride
bigger
at
drop,
Disneyland.
doesn't it?
I think they're about the same. I think 50 feet. 5 stories.
I don't know. We'll have to look it up.
We'll
Which
look
is
it
the
up.
further one? Now, at Knott's Berry Farm, maybe they've started. It's been a long time since I've been there. They don't take your picture like they do at
No,
Disney.
they don't.
I think there's a website where you could look up people's pictures on the
Yeah, you
Disney
can.
log
Yeah.
ride
It's awesome.
and see all the stupid stuff they do.
Or like that Gabriel Iglesias where he throws his shirt up and
Yeah.
they censor it. But yeah, I mean, this movie, this one was very... So the last one takes place in Cairo. This one takes place in India.
It takes place in Asia, which
yeah.
starts in China and then moves its way to India. Yes.
Yeah. So the bulk of this movie takes place in India.
Yep.
Which is also a very different tonal shift as well that they put in, because the last one was very Egypt, like the what they're wearing and the whole vibe and
Yes.
everything. It's in the desert. This was in a temple, well, I say Temple of Doom, but in a temple in...
Well, wait. Before they get to the temple, though,
all right.
they survive this rubber rafting
Yeah.
situation, right?
Yeah.
And then they get to India, and they're visiting the crown prince or something of India, right?
Yeah, which
who
Willie
turns out to be some like 10-year-old kid or something.
Yeah, because
right?
Willie's like, he's single. Like,
well, he's rich.
Yeah, he's rich and he's single. That's all she knows. All she knows, she's gonna try and like impress and woo this prince, who then turns out to be a little child.
Yes, but there's a whole scene where they're at a dinner table. And, and they drag it out a bit, but they serve them all this food, which I'm sure if probably offensive to the Indian culture.
Oh, I'm sure that was not PC in that scene.
I don't know how appropriate that would be in this day and age.
I don't think it would be made in this day and age.
The basic premise of the story was all the food they serve them is like the grossest thing you can imagine.
It's monkey brains.
Ending with cold monkey brains for dessert.
Yeah.
It was some sort of giant beetle or something where they suck the guts out of. It was snake.
It was snake. They did serve
that
snake.
They cut open. Baby steaks come out.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, the political correctness of this.
I don't think this movie would hold up.
How they got away with it, different time, I guess.
Yeah.
Because this was 1984.
Yeah, it was a couple years later. But before we get to this scene, we do meet this group of people in this struggling village who their sacred stones have been stolen and taken from them. And all they know is that they went to the temple.
Yes.
And so now this poor town, their village, is...
And they took all their children.
Yeah, they took all the children. Their crops are dying. Everything is dying. And they're starving. And all the children have been taken. So that's when Indy sets off on the adventure. That's the whole cause to reason. Like, the stone's taken. He has to try and save this village. And all he knows is that the stones are what make this village run. So he's got to go get the stones.
Yes. Which is very different, right? In Indiana Jones, or I keep saying Indiana, in Raiders of the Lost Ark... The idea was he was trying to get this Ark of the Covenant to put in a museum.
Yeah.
In this case, he's more of the Robin Hood theme. He's trying to get these stones to give back to this village.
Yeah.
And gain their power. So they took a totally different turn from Indiana Jones, the archaeologist, the curator, the guy that's going to get stuff for the historian.
Yeah.
And they turned it into Indiana Jones, sort of the hero of these people.
Yeah, you asked me last week if Indiana Jones would be considered a superhero. Not in the other ones, but this one would be the closest, I think, to him being like a superhero.
To him being a superhero, yes.
Because it was
he doesn't have powers, per se.
Yeah.
But he kind of does.
Well,
he has the whip.
Batman doesn't have powers.
Right, but he has the whip, and that whip seems to, take on anything.
I mean, that's a physics-defying whip.
That's right.
that he has there.
So I don't know, what is the definition of a superhero?
I mean, as far as like in a movie, I'd say in this one he definitely qualifies as someone who is going out of his way and doing some pretty crazy stuff to then save these people.
Right. He's superhero-ish. He has the whip. He has the
outfit.
As you could see, I am dressed again in my for week 2 in my Indiana Jones outfit, and I have with me once again for you listeners my signed Harrison Ford picture signed by Harrison Ford himself
for good luck.
for good luck.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm geeking out on Indiana Jones.
You're going to have to bring it for the next few episodes, too. It's
Okay.
good luck now. So then we move into the temple, which then we have that scene of eating monkey brains, which is...
Cold monkey brains.
Horrific.
A very different distinction. Warm monkey brains versus cold monkey brains. Very different.
Would you eat either of them?
Probably not.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. I'm not going to say I would try it. But, yeah, and then we move into kind of like, then the adventure starts to get going. Now they're staying the night in this temple, in this, like, palace.
In the palace.
And
they stumble across.
Yeah, by pushing on the statue, stumble across a pathway to then coming on this cult ritual.
Yeah, that's where it got a little weird for me.
So, yeah, the last one we talked about got a little religious and supernatural at the very end. This one is very supernatural the entire way through. It was this cult of this guy who would say these things, and then he would reach in and pull the person's heart out, and then the person would be dunked into lava as he's like holding their heart.
Yeah, they were doing some sort of...
It went a complete weird direction.
some sort of weird ritual kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they dragged this out a bit.
It was a long scene.
It was a long, drawn-out scene. We weren't having adventure.
No.
We were just having this sort of weird, ritualistic kind of thing.
Yeah, which, I mean... As far as like just the I appreciate that they tried something new with this one. That they tried to do something. They didn't want to make the same movie again, and that's a very tough thing to do. Is trying not to make the same movie twice.
And it did take them 3 years to get to this point.
So I think I appreciate what they were trying to do. I think Steven Spielberg was trying to do something different and didn't want to make the same movie again. But wow, he went in a completely different. He made a huge left turn on this one.
He did,
but. I mean, I did like parts of it. I mean, like we said, it was a little dragged out. Like, there's, you have the person just like, Om Nam Shivaya, and he reaches in their chest and pulls out the heart. But
I wonder, I mean, I would like to meet somebody that speaks, I don't know what language they were speaking. It was Hindi or something. To be Hindi. But if what they say is actually real or if it's not.
Made up for the movie?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pankot Palace. I was looking at Pankot Palace. So... along with this, Indy comes across the child slavery ring.
Yes. So the whole idea, right? I mean, let's talk about the premise, right? So the whole premise is, even though he stumbles into this, it turns out the warlord here, or whatever he is, has created
Mola Ram.
Mola Ram has created he's sort of hypnotized people into following his cult. By having them drink the blood of something, I don't even know what it was, that hypnotizes them into following this cult, when in effect, he's looking for 2 of the 5 stones. He has 3 of them. The stone you mentioned at the village, they had 1 of them. These stones are very powerful. He has 3 of them. He's looking for the other 2, and supposedly... The lore was they were buried somewhere there.
Yeah.
And so he takes the children from this village... And we go back to the Holes story. I never thought about Holes tying into this, but you go back to the Holes story. The children of these villagers enslaved to dig and mine for these other 2 stones, because when he has the 5 stones, he has the ultimate power.
Yeah, which also under his brainwashing is the prince that we met earlier, the little 10-year-old prince, is under the spell of it as well. So that's why he's able to run this whole thing right underneath his nose the whole time.
That's right.
And... I mean, this movie is interesting. You have, again, Willie Scott she gets captured, and then this whole thing. And Short Round is,
She gets captured, 10 times in this movie.
This definitely, maybe about the same as Marion Ravenwood in the last one.
Maybe, yes.
But that trend does not continue in the next one. We'll get into that next week. But, this movie, it just took a weird turn into this cultish, religious thing of, Mola Ram, and he needs the stones, and ripping people's hearts out. And stuff.
It did get a little weird, and realistically, you start to lose a little bit. I mean, in the first movie, you're engaged from the first scene. Yeah. I mean, the literal first scene, all the way through to the end, you're engaged. Yeah. In this movie, it starts out with a dance number, and then you get through that, and it's these chase scenes, and you're like, okay, we're back to Indiana Jones stuff.
Yeah.
But then we get this weird cultish kind of thing where... And this is where it got really weird, where Indiana Jones becomes then mesmerized. They make him drink the blood. He becomes hypnotized, and and he's locked into this hypnosis, and he becomes a bad guy for a short period of time. I think the only time in the 4 movies where Indiana Jones actually becomes the bad guy.
Yeah, it gave him more of a sense of, like, I guess, relatability. He was beaten and he was brainwashed, and he then helps that. Oh, was brainwashed, helping them take out, almost kill Willie Scott.
Yep.
Because now she's in that cage and she's about to be dunked in the lava.
He doesn't know what he's doing, but then Short Round brings him around by burning him with a torch.
Which, I mean, like I was saying, that kid is fantastic. I mean,
he is good.
Is probably the best. Like, I mean, the writing was different. Indy was good, but he was the best part of this movie for me. He was the most engaging part of this whole thing for me.
He was, and really, I'm trying to think. I mean, Indiana Jones always has the love interest, but doesn't necessarily have the sidekick.
Yeah.
This was a little different.
Well, you kind of said last week, Martin Brody's kind of the sidekick, but he's not along for the adventure.
Yeah, and then in 3 we get into his dad, but this is really a sidekick that he had. I don't know where this kid came from. He mentions something about he found him, he lost his family, but he doesn't really mention why. He's just there.
Yeah.
And then we never see him again in 3 and 4.
Never mentioned even.
But we get through this ritualistic thing. Indiana Jones snaps out of it, and then he saves Willie.
Yeah.
And then it's back to the 3 of them. But then traditional Indiana Jones starts with the greatest chase scene of all Indiana Jones movies.
The background.
The minecart.
Which, I gotta say, why was this not the ride? Like, I get the ride was good at Disneyland, but why was this not the ride at Disneyland? This is by far the greatest chase scene in all 4 of the movies, in my opinion. This is
fantastic.
The most fun, the most intense, the craziest of all of them.
But unbelievable because they jump tracks and somehow this minecart doesn't fall off. I don't know much about minecarts, but my guess is they're not that gripped to the track.
It's a fantastic chase scene. I think the biggest downside about this movie is there's not a lot of meat to it. Like the fact that we've pretty much covered everything and we're 20 minutes in up until this.
There's some dragging. The whole ritual thing kind of drags out. The dance number dragged out a little bit at the beginning. Yeah. Some of the chase scenes drag out, but the minecart, you can't get enough of that.
No, I mean if they did an hour and a half of this instead of the movie, I would have been totally happy with this.
I think last week we talked about rides that from movies, and there's an Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, the whole bit, right? But the minecart thing, there's actually a ride at Knott's Berry Farm, which is a theme park here in California. Yeah. And it's a mine-based ride. And it's not based on this movie at all, but it's called Mine something, I don't know. But you ride in a minecart. Yeah. You ride in a minecart, and it looks like the set.
It's basically an Indiana Jones ride without being an Indiana Jones ride.
They could turn it into an Indiana Jones ride really quickly if they had the rights to do so.
Yeah, that's true. They could. I mean, this was the most fun part of the movie for me. I mean, the most entertaining, the most well-made. I mean, I feel like they had a budget, and they spent everything to make this scene, then thought whatever's left over, put to the rest of the movie, and the set design for the palace. And that's pretty
I mean, the sets are incredible. The things they've built, if you watch this movie, you're like, how did they do that? I mean, when you watch this movie more than anything, they had to build all this stuff, right? There's not something that exists like this, right? So you had to build all this out, and it was fantastic how they did that. And the mine cart chase scene goes on for a long time.
It's a good chunk of the movie.
It's a really long mine shaft.
Yeah. And is this before or after? Did we jump over when Short Round basically frees all the child slaves?
That happens after the mine.
After the mine?
After the mine ride.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they go on this mine ride, which is just an outstanding ride. Which, by the way, I did want to go into
I think that happens after now.
No, I think it's before.
Because I remember they go along with the keys and open everybody, but I didn't remember if that was before or after.
It's when Short Round wakes up the prince.
Yeah, so the prince is brainwashed as well.
Yeah.
And then he gets in a fight with him. So, once again, when we talk about how does this movie get away with such inappropriate things, 2 children fighting each other to the death, right?
That's
probably true. Wasn't appropriate, but they get in a fight, they fight it out, and then I think he burns him with a torch too, and then that gets him out of his trance or whatever he's in, and then he realizes, and then that's when they go free all the children.
I think so. I mean, I remember the first time I saw this movie after watching Raiders, I did not like it. it's taken every viewing thus far to appreciate more and more of it. I think after seeing Crystal Skull, I definitely appreciated this one a lot more than the first time. It just lacked, I think, the charm of the first
they
Indiana
went
Jones.
They went a different direction. They lost some of the charm. What I love about it, and when we talk next week, 3 brings it all back.
Yes, definitely.
So yes, this wasn't one. This wasn't Raiders of the Lost Ark. This wasn't
Last Crusade.
Last Crusade. But they, it was a good movie.
Yeah.
It wasn't at the level of 1 and 3, but you're right. I think they were going astray, and they brought it back.
Yeah.
And generally, you don't see that. When they go astray, they stay astray.
Yeah.
On sequels.
Well, they did a good job. I think when this came out, I don't know. I mean, I wasn't obviously alive when this one came out, but you probably might remember. Was this received well when this came out? Like, were people like, "Oh, you gotta go see Temple of Doom"?
Absolutely. I believe
Okay.
if you look at the numbers, like the first one, it cost about $18-20 million to make.
Yeah.
And I think the first weekend, the box office draw was $20 million. And
But was that because this was a good movie, or is that because Raiders was such a good movie?
Well, because Raiders was such a good movie, it played upon that. And, I mean, look, you're trying to... Raiders of the Lost Ark was near perfection.
Yeah.
You're trying to copy that, and that's impossible to do. And if Steven Spielberg is good at many things, one thing he's very good at is, he made 2 to be different for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's a very entertaining movie, and if 1 never existed, 2 still would have done very well.
Yeah, definitely.
So we keep comparing it to 1. That's impossible to do.
Yeah, trying right now to put 1 out of my mind, looking at 2, it's a very entertaining, very fun, very different kind of action-adventure movie than I'd ever seen before.
Much darker.
Very dark, yeah. You have the children fighting, you have child slavery, you have all this, people getting their hearts ripped out on screen, and it wasn't just that they get their hearts ripped out, it's that you see the guy holding it as it's pulsing in his hand, and it's setting on fire because they're being done, it's very different. See, this was very,
But then you still bring in all the Indiana Jones stuff, so you have Indiana Jones has to fight the big guy. There's some big... enormous guy, right? He fights him. They're on a conveyor belt that's crushing the rocks, right? And then he gets stuck in the crushing of the rock, the machine that's crushing him, and he gets sucked into that, and it crushes
just
the
like the
bad guy.
propeller blades from the last
just
one.
Like
the
propeller
rock crusher.
blades. So you have the Indiana Jonesy kind of stuff that goes on. They didn't play up the whole. In fact, is Brody in this movie at all?
No, not at all.
He's
I don't even
not
think
in
he's
this movie
mentioned
at all. They don't talk about the professor stuff. They call him Dr. Jones a couple of times when Willie's character refers to him as Dr. Jones. And I think there's a whole part where Short Round keeps saying, you call him Dr. Jones.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, that kid is fantastic. But, yeah, he did a good job of making it different while trying to keep the things people liked. But I don't think he kept enough. And that's why when it went to Last Crusade, he brought back a lot of the same tones. It was kind of like the same indie feel from the first one. But also bringing in Sean Connery in the third one and making it very different as well. He did a good job. But
3 I'm excited that we're going to talk about next week because that's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
I mean, in some respects, 3 could almost be better than 1. I'm just saying.
We'll get into that. But then after this movie, we have the mine scene, which we talked about. They come out of the mines, and that's when we get the big scene on the bridge, which I think is a fantastic scene.
The scene on the bridge is fantastic as well.
That's I think when you get the best.
It's not a. I mean, it's a bridge, but it's a rope bridge across a giant
chasm.
River. Yeah, chasm. There's a river below, and in the river below are gators.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, you couldn't get
or
more
crocodiles or whatever's in a river in Asia.
I mean, I think this was the best acting of the movie from everyone, from the villain, from Willie, from Indy. I think the best acting of the movie. The best action. Well, not the best action. I think they're trained.
Great
best fighting.
Yeah, but great special effects too.
Well, that's the only. This movie did win an Oscar. The only Oscar it won was best visual effects.
Oh well.
And I think that the scene and the mine scene
because they hold up today. I mean, the visual effects hold up today.
I was very surprised watching these two again and seeing that and being like, oh yeah, no, this is perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you watch Star Wars and you're like, wow.
Yeah, it's rough.
We thought that was cool visual effects.
That was groundbreaking for the 70s.
It was groundbreaking when it happened, but the visual effects in this movie still hold up today.
Yeah, definitely. And the bridge scene is, I mean, you have the gators down there, and you have the scene these two groups are converging on Indy in the middle of the bridge, and the bridge gets cut, and he's falling.
Well, he cuts it.
Yeah.
He cuts the bridge on purpose Willie and Short Round are on the bridge, so
Yeah.
he tells them to hold on. He cuts it, which dumps a lot of the bad guys that are converging
One
on
side
him.
of it, yeah.
And then they swing to the side of the mountain, and they're all holding on, and it basically ends up with him and the chief bad guy. What's his name?
Oh, Mola Ram.
Mola Ram. Willie and Short Round are still on the bridge. There's sort of the fight scene off the bridge. They all get to the top, and then the English soldiers come and save them.
Yeah. Which, not to get too historical on this, but 1930s, this was when India was under British rule, right? Yeah.
I believe so. I'm not the best at history.
You look like you could be, though. That's the thing.
Yeah. I mean, I look like Indiana Jones, but don't confuse, fans, don't confuse. I am not Indiana Jones. I'm just pretending to be one.
Which, sorry. Talking about this movie, though.
And by the way, Dom and Grayson, this is a shout out to you. You have to take my lead here. I don't know what podcast you're doing next, but you have to take my lead here. I challenge both of you to dress in character. That's all I have to say. Go ahead.
Okay, so, looking at this movie, when you look at the cast, there's really only 4 main actors. Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, Kate Capshaw as Willie Scott, Ke Huy Quan as Short Round, and Amrish Puri as Mola Ram.
That's it.
That's it. That's the main group. You have child actors, you have side
Oh,
actors.
there's tons of people in it. You
There's-
have the whole
but that's
town of people.
There's people in it.
You know what was
but-
kind of cool though? It seemed like when they did the town and everything, they used like local. It looked like local people, whether they were actors or not. But
Yeah.
it really seemed like they
Like
they embraced the areas that they shot these movies in.
yeah, like it looked like I think they would have had to shoot in it. They had elephants that they were riding and stuff early in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the actors were flown in, but as far as the extras go, filling in the scenes, they had to be people living in the area. I mean, there's no way they flew in those people.
Right.
Like they were shooting in India. They had to pull in some Indian
Well,
people.
and then of course one of the biggest dramas was right. Steven Spielberg was married to Amy Irving at first.
Yes.
He did get divorced from Amy Irving, but then he met Kate Capshaw on this, and they eventually became married. So the question is, the cart before the horse.
Yes. Was she cast because she was
Yes.
married to him and all that? I mean, she's not a bad actress.
Well, she
by
wasn't
any-
married to him when she was cast, but yes.
She's a really good actress. I think she nailed the role that they gave her. I think that
Oh, she was great. She was great.
I think-
What other movies was she in? I mean, this is the movie I know her from. So
honestly, I don't know if I could tell you this is the movie that I know her from as well. I mean, she was in like some recent stuff, like Six Underground with Ryan Reynolds, or Horse Girl with Alison Brie. But I mean, besides that, nothing like major. Like I'm looking through her IMDb right now. There's really nothing that I would.
it's almost like when she married Steven Spielberg, she became Mrs. Spielberg, and her acting career kind of took a pause.
It seemed, yeah. I mean, she was fantastic in this. I mean, I think the role that they gave her was not written as well as they wrote Marion Ravenwood, but I think that she did a very good job for the character that they gave her.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know how it was written versus how she played it, or how big of an influence she was on the character itself. But, she fit the part fantastic. So
Yeah, I think the thing that she did really well is that she was the comedic relief. She was really funny in this movie. She brought a lot of really funny and also physical comedy, which I don't think we've seen a lot of in the
I know when I was doing research, there's a scene where they when they're in the palace and they find the sort of the passageway to the wherever the whole digging and slaves are going on. They in typical Indiana Jones, they go through a room of death. There's dead bodies, and then there's, in this case, not snakes but bugs.
Yes.
And she
just to reach into the thing, right?
She has a scene where she has bugs all over her, and apparently when I was reading it, she literally had to have bugs all over her.
They couldn't CGI that.
I couldn't do that.
No. Well, it's like in the last movie, Alfred Molina had to have all those tarantulas all over his back.
on him, right?
I would never do that. I don't care what amount of money they offered me to do that.
If I saw a tarantula in a enclosed case, I don't want to get near it.
No, he had to have 12 20 covering his back.
Yeah.
And same with her. She had to have how many like centipedes and bugs and stuff on her.
Actually, if you want to see something funny, go to YouTube and look up. There's a Conan O'Brien episode with who's the actor? Kevin
Hart.
Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is on, and Kevin Hart doesn't like creepy crawly things. No. And Conan O'Brien has, I think it's Steve Irwin's son.
Oh, he's fantastic. Yeah.
Steve Irwin's son, and they bring out a tarantula, and it's just hysterical.
That's awesome.
It's hysterical.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It's really good. I couldn't imagine what she had to go through to do that. I mean, even like watching like Fear Factor when they had to put their head in like the thing with all the spiders.
Yeah.
She had to do that for, I mean, how many takes too? It's not just the one time.
Right.
It's multiple takes of having to do that.
Now, today if they did that movie, the bugs wouldn't really be there.
No, CGI entirely.
CGI.
Yeah.
But back then, the bugs were really there.
They couldn't do that. They had no technology to make fake bugs.
Right.
And she had to sit. I'm sure that I'm sure she looks back and if she's ever seen this movie again, thinks, I really wish we could have made this now where they'd be fake. But yeah, she did a great job. Also, I want to go back to earlier in the movie. The reason that they find that is because there's a whole scene where like she's kind of into Indy and he's into her and they're going back and forth, but there's the assassin. So she thinks that he's not coming into her room because he doesn't want to. So she's outside the door like, I'm amazing. You wish you could get with me, and he's being strangled by the assassin in his room.
But that's typical Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah,
I think in 1, 2, and 3, the love interest, there's this miscommunication where Indy's being attacked, but the love interest thinks she's being ignored, right?
Yeah, I love that scene. I think she played that perfectly as far as like her role. Which then, so after we kind of get to the scene of like the chase scene, and Indy takes the stones. Then we have at the end of the movie, Indy has the stones from there. He returns them, and we can just assume that life is back to normal in the village. The kids have returned, and everything is happy, and everyone's happy in the end of the movie. And that's kind of where
So when he comes off the broken rope bridge, Indy survives. The bad guys die. He saves one stone.
Yes.
And he brings it back to the village, and there's a great scene where not only does he return the stone to the village so they get their sort of livelihood back, all the children come back to the village as well.
I mean, it was a great way to end it, very like happy and very like tying it with a nice bow, and it's very good. But I mean, I think it was a good movie. I think that it's not as good as Raiders. It's not as good as. Oh
wait, I'm trying to remember. So he returns everybody and then it just ends.
Yeah, isn't it like he's being like they're all hugging and stuff, and like then the credits kind of start to roll as they're.
I guess so.
On their way out. That's pretty much it.
I guess so.
We never see him go back. Like I said, the movie 90% of the movie takes place in India, in this village or in that temple.
Right.
That's pretty. It's very simple as far as like it wasn't like the first one. They're flying from place to place. It's from the university. It's Nepal. It's Cairo. It's Germany. It's like all these different places that they go.
Yeah.
This one is they go from China to India.
Yeah, he never really. Yeah, Short Round never really gets explained beyond that.
And they never do it in any other movie. They never talk about like what happened to Short Round. Like we just kind of assume that maybe he figured in between this and Last Crusade, maybe something figured out. He got a family or someone to come in.
Because Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade sort of go together, but this one's just sort of sitting out there on the side all by itself.
It was a very interesting thing. I think, like we talked about earlier, he brought it back to what the original ones. This was so out in left field that it stands on its own. It's its own movie. It can almost be its own series.
Have we seen that in any of these other trilogies? I mean, they, or I say trilogy because 4, we'll talk about it, doesn't count. But any of the other trilogies, they all sort of play upon each other, right?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, well, also I think the interesting part about this was they didn't shoot Raiders with the knowledge of a second movie coming. Or even a third. They shot Raiders as a standalone film, like we talked about last week. Raiders of the Lost Ark then was changed to Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark because it was becoming a franchise.
Right.
Usually when a trilogy shoots, like when you look at like Lord of the Rings, they shot all 3 at the same time because they knew they had 3 movies.
Right.
So I think that was the disconnect, is that they made the first one and thought, oh shit, they like it. Let's make a second one. And then so they did it very disconnected and then thought, oh, that didn't do as well. Let's go back to our roots and make a third one.
Yeah.
And then they said that. Then some studio, whoever made it, I can't remember who made it.
Paramount, right?
Was it Paramount? Yeah, it was Paramount. Said, hey.
I'm sure this is a story of, like you hear in Hollywood all the time. nobody wanted to do it, and Paramount took a chance, right?
Yeah, and now Paramount
George Lucas made $10 bazillion more on top of that.
Yeah, Paramount wanted money, so they said, hey, let's revive Indiana Jones and do it again, and then that's when we got Crystal Skull. That was just a money, I think, grab from Paramount saying, we made a lot back in the day, let's try that again. But I think that's what this was. I think they shot the first one without any knowledge of doing another one. That's kind of where the disconnect comes from is, shit, they want more, we gotta make more right now.
Well, yeah, with the kind of money they were making off these movies, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when push came to shove, they probably made $500 million in profit off of this movie.
Yeah. Oh, easily.
Yeah.
I mean, and like I said, it's growing. There's more movies. There's video games. I mean, this is pop culture incarnate. This is the epitome of what...
Now, did you say when we did episode 1, you mentioned that there's more coming? It's first I've heard of that.
There is a fifth Indiana... So, it's been a couple of years. They've had a fifth Indiana Jones in the works. It's been kind of stuck in development.
Is it still George Lucas and Steven Spielberg?
It would still be Steven Spielberg, and Harrison Ford said he wants to do it. He wants to do one more. I think the only hang-up is, does Paramount want to put that much money into a series where Crystal Skull basically killed it? I think that's the hang-up, is they don't... Unless Steven Spielberg goes to Paramount with a script that would be amazing, I don't think they're willing to do it, but it's in the works. They have it ready. Harrison Ford said he wants to do it, but it's his last one. Steven Spielberg wants to do it. So I think it just depends. Does Paramount want to take that risk, and do we have another Crystal Skull on our hands, or are we going to get a Lost Crusade situation going on?
Right.
But if they do it again, I think it would be a passing of the torch. Whatever actor, I think I read somewhere there people are thinking it might be Chris Pratt.
Okay.
Whatever actor wants to come in and take that role, but then also... I don't know, because a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of the later Jurassic Park movies, and that Alan Grant role was passed to Chris Pratt, so I don't know if he's the right choice exactly.
Right.
But,
we'll see.
You have a lot of talented actors out there. You can give it to anyone, and I think as long as you write a good script and you have a good score behind it, I think you can make it okay.
Sounds like a pretty big challenge.
I don't think they can do it. I think the pull was Harrison Ford. People liked Harrison Ford, not so much... I think a lot of people didn't leave Raiders of the Lost Ark going... That storyline was changing. It was Harrison Ford was awesome.
But they were, 2, like you said, was out left field, but 1 and 3 were fantastic storylines.
But I think Harrison Ford, and we have someone like Sean Connery in the third one, that makes even okay stories seem amazing when you have these actors who pull it off the page like that.
Right.
So I think that'd be a big pull. I hope they can do it. I mean, I really hope they could pull off Crystal Skull, and we were all wrong there, so we'll see if they even make it. But for sure, there's a game coming, so the universe in this Indiana Jones world is expanding, so we'll see.
Okay.
But I think that about wraps up our Temple of Doom talk. You all right if I go in the beer?
Absolutely.
So...
I finished mine, by the way. It was very good.
It was really good. I actually think that this is so far the top of our Indiana Jones beers so far. This is from Anchorage Brewing, which is in Anchorage, Alaska. We've
Never
had them
been.
on the show. Yeah, I want to go. This brewery looks beautiful. Let's see if I can get more pictures. But, I mean, we've had them before. We had them on the Age of Ultron episode. Fantastic brewery. Some of the best beer I've had on this show by far, I have to say. This beer is called...
Where did you buy it?
So I bought it at High Times in Costa Mesa, California. It is called The Doomed. It is an IPA, a triple dry hopped with Citra and Strata hops. It is 6.4 alcohol by volume, and it's fantastic. I mean, this was easily my favorite. Anchorage has made some very good beers. Last time I had them on, was one of their sours, so it was interesting to try an IPA from them, which was, I mean, just as good. I would highly recommend them if you can get it. I'm pretty sure they ship across the country, different places. I mean, it's not like they get that many people to Alaska, I'm sure, to try the beer, but I would highly recommend that if you can get a hold of them to check them out. They were fantastic. Their beer is always great. And, let's see. Our beers are distributed nationally and across the globe. So, yeah, if you can get a hold of their beer, definitely check it out. They are across the entire world. So, I highly recommend them, Anchorage Brewing. So, I think that about wraps up our Indiana Jones. But
awesome.
I do want to say we are...
Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom.
Temple of Doom, yes. We are on Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts for the audio versions. New episodes every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And yeah, I think next we're going to do Last Crusade, which is another kind of back to that, like we were saying, back to that original formula. And are you going to be dressed as Indy for that episode?
Maybe.
Bring it back?
Maybe.
All right, we'll see. So yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.